content warning that there will be some discussion of disordered eating in this video. Last week I discovered that a super popular vegan food content creator is no longer vegan, or at least that her content no longer is. Although this was news to me, it actually happened a few months ago, so you may have already heard about it. Regardless, I thought this would be a good video topic because it brings up a lot of interesting conversations around veganism and vegan food and how it often gets represented or misrepresented by influencers. So this creator's handle is Nat's Nourishments and her actual name is Natalia Rudin. She has 1.4 million followers on Instagram and about 750,000 on TikTok. I had seen her reels pop up a few times over the last year. I watched a few of them, but I never followed her. But you may have seen her. She has this sort of very posh, draggy British accent where it's like, today I'm making a meal with humble chickpeas. It's not an unpleasant voice, it's just a very distinct sounding British accent.
When it's hot and sunny outside, my lunches begin to fall more and more under the bracket of dips and picky bits, kind of like picnic food.
The angle of her content is that she's a private chef, and then on her reels she showcases the meals she makes for herself at the end of a long day of cooking for other people. I always thought the meals she made looked really good. They're very whole food, plant-based inspired, a lot of beans in these sort of rich, creamy sauces. There were always a lot of close-up shots of these dishes she would make with a piece of bread or pita, you know, indulgently scooping through and getting this huge, messy scoop. Not only did I think the meals look good, I was happy to see a vegan food content creator with so many followers. I believe that's a very important part of the vegan movement, educating people on what vegan food can look like, how to cook it. Short form content can be a really great platform for that, and I think she accomplished that really well with hers. So what happened? A week or two ago I was on TikTok and I was thinking about how there are all these big chef accounts like Wishbone Kitchen and Broccoli Rob that showcase cooking in a very aesthetically pleasing lifestyle type of way that people really seem to enjoy watching, where it's about the food, but it's also sort of more about the lifestyle and the person themselves. And I was thinking about how I don't know of any vegan chef accounts like that. I feel like vegan short form food content tends to be in this very formulaic style. They show the food, they show them taking a bite and being like, and then gets into shots of them cooking it. And that's basically it. And that's fine, but they're not as lifestyle focused, which is what I was looking for. So I searched, I think, vegan chef on TikTok. And again, it was just a bunch of the formulaic style reels coming up, or TikToks. And then I came across a Nat's Nourishments video and I was like, oh, I haven't watched one of her videos in a while. I'll watch this one. And I was very surprised to see that she was cooking with ahi tuna. I was like, okay, I think that vegan sushi has really come a long way, and there's some that look very realistic, and maybe in the UK they have even more options, and is that what she's cooking with? And then I saw a comment asking her where she gets her tuna from, and she said the local fishmonger. And then I was like, okay, I don't think we're talking about a vegan alternative here. So I was very confused because, as I said, I remember this person being a vegan account. And I think I saw a comment on that TikTok that was like, wait, I thought this was a vegan account. Is this no longer vegan? And she said something confirming that. So I did what any good internet sleuth would do, and I went over to Reddit, I searched Nat's Nourishments, and what do you know, I came across a post from our friends over on the ex-vegan subreddit announcing that Nat's Nourishments content would no longer be vegan. The post was from March 24th and they included screenshots of a post that she had made announcing it. So then I went to Instagram and found that post. I'm going to show the reel first, but the announcement was actually in the caption and we'll talk about that after.
I'm going through a bit of a life change at the moment, and even though I've already addressed it and clarified it in my stories, I know some people may have missed that, so I'm going to further clarify it in the caption to this recipe. That's so good. So if you're interested in finding out what's going on, read below. But if you don't care and you're just here for the food, then this is a delicious jerk carlin pea recipe with roasted cauliflower and a mango lime salsa. It's punchy, fresh and colourful and perfect to bring on the spring-summer vibes.
I've never actually heard of carlin peas, but like I said, her recipes always looked good and this one's no exception. Let's read the caption together.
Life update for anyone who cares. Also, the recipe for this is in my stories. I never identified fully as a vegan, as I have always worn and bought leather goods and have never checked my products for cruelty. I did, however, follow a plant-based diet with the exception of eating honey and drinking wine without checking. In the last couple of weeks, I have decided to reintroduce eggs, some dairy, in parentheses cheese, and fish into my diet. This is for a few reasons which I will explain further down. I know that the majority of you on here are not plant-based or even vegetarian, but this page originally started as a plant-based one, and so it feels necessary to clarify my transition. First, I would like to explain this. My page and I will remain 85% plant-based, but I will start posting a few recipes using the new introductions in the coming months. That being said, whenever you see ingredients like cream, butter, milk, and some cheeses or meats, bacon, chicken burgers, etc., I can say that they will almost always be plant-based. In the last 6 months, I have been experiencing really strong cravings for eggs and fish, which I have been trying hard to suppress. As someone who lives to eat and does not eat to live, this was taking away a lot of enjoyment for me when it came to food and creating a bit of a struggle for me mentally. I really love all the plant-based foods I eat, but there are just no good alternatives in my eyes for eggs and fish and most cheeses. The plant-based alternative to yogurts, milks, butters, creams, etc. are wonderful, and that is why I will continue to use them all. As a chef, I have to admit it felt very limiting following a plant-based diet. I've consistently posted 3 new plant-based recipes every week for the last 1.5 years, and roughly 1 to 3 every week for the 3.5 years before that, and I feel as though I have creatively reached a limit to how I can create new, exciting recipes without the addition of non-plant-based ingredients and without having to turn to molecular experimentation. Continued in the comments below. I'm aware some people will disagree with this, but it's just how I feel. I've also felt extremely limited when traveling, especially in remote rural areas. It's felt as though I have been unable to explore and appreciate cultures properly, and actually made me feel a bit rude asking for food to be made specially for me in restaurants. This next part is really private to me and scary to admit, but it's part of it, and I pride myself on being honest, and it feels like a good time to be honest about this part of my life. When I decided to go plant-based, I was actually in the height of quite a physical eating disorder. I changed my diet not because I was an animal rights or environmental activist, but as another form of restriction. I did it mostly because I wanted to lose weight, hence the continuation of wearing leather, etc. Over the last 3.5 years, I have started to have more autonomy over my body and not allowed the eating disorder to control me. I am no longer a slave to the gym or binge eater, and I no longer harm my body in the way people with certain types of eating disorders do. Letting go of the restrictive diet feels like it's another step of my recovery, which is definitely something I'm going to embrace and be proud of. If you have ever experienced an eating disorder, then you will probably understand how freeing it feels to me to allow myself to eat what I want when I want. All that being said, my fiance is still plant-based, and so our household will remain mostly plant-based. I will always be a massive advocate for plant-rich meals. When I do indulge in non-plant-based ingredients, I will always ensure they are of good, sustainable quality and try my very best to always stick to that. And lastly, the beans will be going nowhere. Thank you for reading, and I hope you can understand my decision. Sending you all lots of love, and I'm excited for this next chapter.
I would love to hear all of your thoughts on her caption. I'm going to share my thoughts now, and that will naturally lead us into discussing the comments. So first of all, I think it was brave of her to talk about her eating disorder on a public platform. I'm sure that felt very vulnerable and not an easy thing to do. And I want to be very gentle on that front and non-judgmental. When it comes to any kind of mental health issues around food, I'm not going to tell anyone that they're wrong. These issues are very serious, can be very dangerous, and are very tricky to navigate, and I'm in no position to tell anyone how to navigate them. I will say this is something I have noticed quite a few times now, not just noticed, but am picking up on from people directly sharing this information, that there is sometimes a crossover between someone having an eating disorder and also going vegan. Some of these people, including Natalia, have shared that going vegan or going to a vegan diet was a way for them to restrict in a more socially acceptable way, as much as we can call vegan diets socially acceptable. I have also sometimes noticed crossovers between someone having an eating disorder, going vegan, and also working with food in a public way. Minimalist Baker, a super popular former vegan recipe blogger, shared when she announced that she wouldn't be doing just vegan recipes anymore, that she had a history with eating disorders and that being vegan felt too triggering for her or didn't feel healthy for her anymore. Abby's Kitchen, the super popular YouTube dietitian, has also shared that she was at one time vegan and also previously struggled with an eating disorder, and that she doesn't feel she can be vegan now because of that.
So with all that said, why don't I just go vegan? Well, simply put, Any kind of restrictive set of food rules is just not healthy for me, given my history of disordered eating.
So I think there is this crossover that we have to be aware of and acknowledge, and also be very careful not to conflate the two. I want to be very clear that I do not think veganism causes eating disorders, which unfortunately, but not surprisingly, the ex-vegans of Reddit were all too quick to try to imply or claim. Which it's like, did you even read her fucking caption in which she clearly says that in the midst of her eating disorder, she went to a vegan diet to try to lose weight because of her eating disorder, not because of veganism. It's tough because a vegan diet is a diet that often gets associated with or touted for its potential weight loss benefits. And if I'm being completely honest, that is what first drew me to a vegan diet. As I have shared before, the book Skinny Bitch really influenced my life in a big way. Watch my vegan journey video or my skinny bitch video for more information on that. And of course, veganism is associated with ethics and a higher moral ground. So if someone is hypothetically looking for a diet to shield their restriction behind, it's not super surprising that a vegan diet would be the one they pick. I have said this before in my vegan journey video that my first stint of veganism, which I would now call mostly just being on a plant-based diet, similarly, I experienced some cravings for really random things that I just thought, oh, that means that it's not possible to be vegan and get everything I need. And as I've shared looking back now, I really think that there were things that I wasn't getting, that I was, maybe deficient in at that time, not getting enough of certain essential nutrients, or just not eating enough overall. And I haven't experienced cravings in the almost 9 years that I've now been vegan on my current vegan journey. So I don't really know what to say about that. I'm not a doctor. As I've said before, if I were experiencing some really intense cravings over the course of months, I'd make sure to go get my blood checked. Am I deficient in anything? What's my diet looking like? Am I eating enough of certain things? A craving isn't a medical diagnosis, but a lot of sort of ex-vegan narratives and spaces online seem to treat it as such. You know, and the parts about traveling, sometimes traveling is harder because there's not really an option for me, and I feel like kind of a brat asking a restaurant to make me a vegan option. Like, talk about first world vegan problems. So on your expensive vacations, like I'm going to Italy and I want to eat the cheese and I feel bad asking the restaurant to not include any in my dish. First of all, there's the Happy Cow app, which is universally beloved based on the fact that it helps you find vegan food or vegan options no matter where you are. One of the most fun parts for me about traveling is finding vegan food, finding these little hidden gems. You can pretty much find these things all over the world, or at least in the places that I'm assuming Natalia travels to. So overall, while I have compassion for Natalia and I respect her honesty, I can't say I'm not disappointed, especially with some of the things she said in her caption, which a lot of the comments address, and so we're going to talk about those now. But before we get into the comments, if you guys are enjoying this video and want even more content from me, you can check out my Patreon. I posted my second patron exclusive video this week. It is a Reddit vegan deep dive where I just searched for vegan on Reddit and reacted to a bunch of different posts from a bunch of different subreddits. It is an absolutely wild ride. I cried, I got infuriated, I laughed. There's lots of other exclusive content and perks on there as well, so if you want to check that out, go to the link on the screen and I will also put it below. And now let's get into the comments. One of the top comments says, "Oh, the self-righteous / negative comments on here are horrible." And Nat's Nourishments replied, "Tell me about it." Let's read some of these comments. Are they self-righteous? Are they negative? Are they horrible? I'll let you decide. Here's one that I really agreed with and that I think was really important. It's always so disappointing to me when people who have a large platform make overarching statements like, there are just no good alternatives for eggs, fish, and most cheeses. That's just simply not true, and it discourages people from even trying to find them. So that is a really good point, and that was something that really bothered me about her caption too. And she did say the qualifier, in my eyes, there's no good alternatives for XYZ. But again, as I've said many times before, why do people follow influencers? To be influenced, because when you follow someone and you watch all their content, you have sort of acknowledged in your mind that this is someone to be trusted. This is someone who is an expert on a certain topic, that you are deciding to listen to what they have to say on a certain subject. And her being a vegan recipe creator, she was a source of information and an authority on the topic of vegan cooking and plant-based eating for a lot of people. So if she says, trust me, this is the best white bean recipe, someone's gonna trust her. If she says, trust me, there's no good alternatives for eggs, cheese, and fish, someone might just be like, okay, I believe you. For her to say that is just so subjective. I mean, even within all of us vegans, there's products that I love that you might hate. There's products that someone on Reddit highly recommends and someone on Facebook says it's the worst product they've ever tried. Everything is so subjective, and it's also so dependent on where you live. She lives in the UK, where there are some of the best vegan products available in the world. In the US, we also have some of the best vegan products available in the world. Different countries all over the world are going to have different vegan products. So using that as one of the reasons, I think, is a pretty weak argument. And I just had to come back on here post-filming to give this update because I noticed that while back in March, Nat claimed there are just no good plant-based alternatives for fish, less than 2 months later, she took a sponsorship with the Vegetarian Butcher for their new Cod Almighty product. So are there just no good alternatives for fish when no one is paying you to say there's no good alternatives for fish? And then once you have a brand wanting to work with you, suddenly you recommend their product? I have absolutely no problem with a well-placed and authentic feeling influencer partnership, but this partnership could not feel any less authentic less than 2 months after Natalia told her 1 million+ followers that there are just no good alternatives. Let's move on to another comment. This is so sad for the animals. Why are there so few who care about animal suffering? I agree. Overall, the caption felt very just kind of bizarrely dismissive of animal suffering, where it's like, so you're aware that it exists, but you're just like, oh, I never cared about that. It's just very strange to me, especially because what we talk about sometimes and what I believe can happen is that someone goes plant-based or, adopts a plant-based or vegan diet for reasons outside of ethics, and then sometimes after a certain amount of time of eating that way, the ethics start to make more sense, or they're more open-minded to hearing the ethical arguments, and then become vegan for ethical reasons. So it is just kind of bizarre to see that this person who was eating entirely plant-based, not vegan, I guess, because of the honey and the wine, but pretty much almost entirely a vegan diet for years, doesn't seem to be affected by the ethical issues at all, or isn't even really acknowledging that in her caption, which people never do in the ex-vegan announcements, as many of us have noticed and we have talked about on this channel many times. There's another comment that talks about the ethics that she actually replied to. The comment said, "It's really sad but unsurprising that nowhere did you mention any moral struggle with the suffering of innocent animals you will now be contributing even more to. I don't know how you can be aware of what happens and choose to contribute to it anyway." And she wrote back, "Sorry to disappoint you. I'm just listening to my body because ultimately my health comes first." This is another thing that again, like I said, I don't want to tell anyone how they should navigate healing from an eating disorder. It is from what I understand, a very non-linear road that can have many twists and turns, and maybe some people never fully recover. However, I don't really understand why it has to be one or the other. My own health or ethics. Why can't both of those things coexist? Why can't you be healthy and not restrict and also be on a vegan diet? From what I have heard, and I believe I heard this on the Chick Peeps podcast with Ivana Lynch, who has been very open about her eating disorder past, and she had someone else on the podcast one time who also had a history of eating disorders, and they're both vegan, and they were talking about how veganism, kind of fits into eating disorder recovery, especially treatment programs. I will definitely try to find the episode and link it below. But they basically said that in eating disorder recovery, if someone goes into recovery and is vegan, like the doctors will just be like, you can't be vegan. You black and white, you cannot be vegan and also recover from this eating disorder. Like, you can't have any restrictions. Ivana and her guest, didn't really agree with this approach to recovery and, didn't really think it was necessary and seemed to think that it was a misrepresentation of veganism, essentially, associating it so closely with the eating disorder rather than the disorder being the big problem. And it just, these types of announcements where it's like, it's too triggering for me, I'm restricting myself too much, again, is furthering the incorrect idea that vegan diets are limiting or restrictive. And I talked about this in my Patreon video in regard to a Reddit post, but there's a quote that I love that's something like, there's upwards of 30,000 different types of edible plants in the world, and people base their diets around 10 different animal foods and then call vegan diets restrictive. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on that. A few people saying they're vegans and they'll continue to follow her. Someone said, so sad to hear this. The idea that plant-based is limiting as a chef feels so backwards when I see more and more inspiring veg cuisine every day. At the end of the day, you do you. But that particular statement I can't agree with. If you are just doing the same exact type of content over and over again for 3 years, I'm sure anything is going to feel limiting at that point. But this is what you do. You do a very repetitive content style that people seem to love, and even if you do end up repeating themes or recipes, probably there's always new people seeing them. People are always getting re-inspired. Do you really think that adding in 3 more ingredients is going to make all the difference in the world? I think someone else said this in a comment, but do you think that maybe speaks to your capacity as a chef in any way? That you're like, I'm getting bored. Okay, well, find another way to combine the 30,000 edible plants in this world. I'm sure you can. Here's the comment that was making the point I was making. No way you can justify animal cruelty with something about feeling limited. There are thousands of plant foods, and yet you need to expand your range by about 3 more foods. Someone said, you felt restricted, so to feel liberated, you restrict other individuals' freedoms by exploiting them for their flesh and secretions. You are being morally hypocritical. Someone said, happy for you. I also gave up veganism during my recovery and never looked back. Hope you ignore all the dogmatic psychos in the comments and do what's best for you. Interesting that people who pay for animals to be murdered call people who are advocating for that not to happen psychos. So those are all the main comments I wanted to address, and like I said, there are many supportive comments that are just like, you do you, girl, like, cool, do your thing. I also want to acknowledge what's kind of interesting with Natalia is that I feel like she can kind of hide behind this story of like, well, I never said I was vegan. When did I ever say that? You guys just assumed. That's your fault that you assumed. When you promote nothing but vegan eating and vegan recipes on your page for years and develop a huge following based off of that, and opportunities and money and sponsorships based off of that, can you really blame people for assuming that the person behind the content may have values that align with their own? And she did say, she said, I know most of you aren't vegan or vegetarian. Like, how do you know that? Have you done polls? Has every single one of your followers responded to that poll? I agree that a lot of people who follow vegan recipe reels are not vegan or even vegetarian, and I think that's incredible. And it almost seems like that's how she's using it to justify this. Like, well, most of you aren't vegan or vegetarian anyway, so what do you care? But yeah, there's something a bit icky to me of making your name for yourself and making a lot of money for yourself and opening up a lot of doors for yourself based on this sort of implied set of morals, and then pull this kind of bait and switch and start exploiting animals on your platform that was completely about food that didn't exploit animals. So of course I want to acknowledge the obvious that Natalia is not technically an ex-vegan, as she claims she never was vegan. She's more ex-plant-based, but I think we can certainly say an ex-vegan influencer. My main concern with all of this, as with most ex-vegan announcements, is that some of the things she says imply some core issues with a vegan diet. That it's insufficient, that you will have cravings because you're not getting proper nutrients, that it's limiting. All of these things either come down to user error or just personal preference, and that's where the clear distinction between plant-based and vegan come into play. If you're plant-based and you're bored with the alternatives, maybe you'll just give it up. Whereas if you're vegan, you're going to be highly motivated to find an alternative that works for you, or just let it go and be satisfied knowing that you doing that means you're not contributing to the suffering of a sentient being. I don't even know if I need to say this, but of course I'm not saying that, oh, just give up on, you know, eating enough food or getting enough calories. Of course that's not what I'm talking about. What she's mentioning in these, like, oh, the cheeses and the things, like, these are sort of like, these aren't necessities. These are sort of additional, extra quality of life indulgences that aren't part of a core diet. Am I furious at Natalia? Do I think she's a giant asshole or a disgrace to the vegan movement? No, I don't think that. At worst, I think she's someone who maybe hid a part of herself for a bit longer than she should have because she was having so much success with what she was doing, and maybe she didn't want to compromise opportunities or income. At the end of the day, it's always just a bit of a bummer when someone that you thought was vegan and really got it turns out to not actually get it. It's just a little bit jarring and disappointing, but it's far from the end of the world. There are many great vegan food content creators, and there will continue to be. I have no doubt of that. I would love to hear what you guys think of all this, so let me know in the comments below. Were you familiar with Natalia? Had you seen her reels before? And what are your thoughts on this particular ex-vegan storyline? Let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more videos. Check out Patreon for even more exclusive content, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!